Hello, everybody. Welcome to xAPI Cohort, a community that is just growing. And today I'm really feeling connected to the community and all that's out there. We've got new people joining all the time. And, at this point in the cohort, we don't have as many new people. But I love the fact that this community is so strong, it's so welcoming, it's so supportive, and we're supporting each other on multiple levels, right? Check out the jobs Slack channel, check out the connections in between each other. As you see somebody interacting or doing or sharing, reach out and ask for help. That happened last week, and Matt Cleaver's jumping in, and I'm talking business owner to business owner behind the scenes with other people about, strategy and startup and wind down and pivot and all this stuff. And and even just chatting backstage with Stella a few minutes ago, and you're all going to love Stella if you don't know Stella. She's just fantastic and brilliant, and I love having her here at Cohort. But just, office location. And yes, two burritos. Yes, I do live in an office complex in which very, very close to me is a physical therapist, a chiropractor, a therapist, a podiatrist, where I went this morning, and tacos. Pretty much everything you need in life is all right there. Because Amazon and Best Buy deliver, right? So, but this community around xAPI has been pretty fantastic. I was talking the other day about the maturity of our industry. And if you all just step back for a second, right, it's very easy to get caught up in the day-to-day. I know some of the project teams are getting stuck with like their day job is interrupting their ability to do their fun side projects in Cohort. And this happens, it's normal, and it's frustrating and it's hard, and we all had great intentions. And some teams are whirling ahead and doing really cool stuff. And so we're frustrated, but there's just, as we look back at the creation of xAPI and the early adoption phase, when you had to have geeks, you had to program it from scratch because nothing did it for you in the early days. ADL used to run the cohorts. Why? Because they were the only ones with the organizing power, and they were the ones moving the spec forward. And so they organized these cohorts. Nobody's job description involved xAPI, right? And a lot of people had no idea what it meant. It was a very vendor-driven space and ADL-driven space. And back then, and I promise I will dig up this slide somewhere, but I drew a map of kind of like what I thought the progress of industry maturation would look like. And it started with, at that point, we were in ADL cohorts. And then I said, no, it'll be community driven, right? And every statement used to be unique, or almost every statement, right? Now data profiles are emerging. Not only data profiles emerging, but the profile builders are emerging, right? So we've got geek-free authoring tools. We have geek-free learning record stores, and even some learning management systems that accept the data in. And now I actually talked to a group of instructional designers on Tuesday night. So Connie Malamed runs a group called Mastering Instructional Design. It's fantastic. Connie is a dear, dear friend and a wonderful soul. And what was really interesting, everybody, was when I asked people why they came to my 7 p.m. session about xAPI, they said, well, it's in all the job descriptions now. I have to know what it is. Think about this. Stop for a minute. It's in all the job descriptions, right? And so we've got to know what this is and be able to use it. And that was just mind-blowing from an industry adoption perspective, right? Just mind-blowing. And if you think about your experience with SCORM on a daily basis, especially you e-learning designer people, right? You don't do SCORM. You don't even think about it. In fact, I find many people who use SCORM know very, very little about it. They just know what it does, and they just click a button. That's it. And it's magic. They know they need it, they know roughly what it does, and they click a button. And so think about that maturity of SCORM. And that's where we're aiming for with xAPI, except we're trying to do it with more types of data and more types of learning experiences and more types of connections to other things. So it's a little bit more complex. So that's what's got me charged up this week, along with, you got it, my regular, very, very strong mocha. So I am enjoying life. So let's go ahead and start with our session this week. Welcome to week 8. We are, of course, recording this session so that if you're not listening to it live, and me and my little caffeine-fueled frenzies and soapbox, you can be catching this afterwards, or if you want it again, right? So send such mug. You know, Khalid, this mug may still be available on cafepress.com. Where you can buy mugs, stickers, t-shirts, all sorts of stuff. And if you all are coming out to any of the, if you're coming out to a conference, hit me up and I will find you. Where are my stickers? I put them away like a responsible human. Oh, Jamie, thank you. I have xAPI cohort stickers, but if you want to direct message me in the chat or in the Slack or here, leave me or send me an email, leave me your mailing address, and I don't care where in the continent or where on the globe you are, Khalid, I will send you an xAPI cohort sticker. Or you could do xAPI cohort at torreslearning.com. I can't even type and talk. Anyway, send us a message with your address and we will send you a sticker. There are 817 people registered for the spring cohort. We have about 60 people that will absolutely, it will absolutely reach Philippines. You've got mail there. We'll send you something. Because it's 3 a.m. in the Philippines. Next week, Rodolin, we have daylight savings here in the US. So you'll have to tell me next week what time it is when we do cohort. In fact, everybody pay attention because the US changes time this weekend. So pay attention to your stuff. Hey, Jamie, we should probably tell people that on our weekly email. Except for Arizona. Don't complicate it. Don't complicate it, Jamie. Okay, so we have 60 people already signed up for the xAPI party, which remember is May 7th, May 6th. So be sure, sign up. We've got links and stuff as we go. It is never too late to join cohort. So while we're on week 8 of 12, I actually told the folks on Tuesday night, if you're just getting started now, it's actually a super awesome time to get started with cohort now because A, they were super interested in data ethics, Stella. So you may have some people in this session specifically because I told them on Tuesday that this was coming. But what's coming up after this are demos. So you get to see in action, right? Which is where I begin with the end in mind, which we don't do at cohort unless you sign up now. So those of you who are presenting for today, for your team updates, we don't have a lot, but we have some. Make sure your microphone is connected. Jamie's also got some instructions in Slack for you. So there's all sorts of good stuff. You know what? With all this time zone chat going on, somebody, I don't know, might be an amazing cohort project would be to design xAPI-enabled e-learning about time zones around the world and whether or not they change for daylight savings. Just saying, just a hint. Because it's never too late to join xAPI cohort, we do just a little bit of onboarding for our newcomers who may not have ever joined the weekly session or listened to the weekly session afterwards, just to get everybody up to speed so that you feel like you know enough coming in to engage. Because when there's 4,000 people in a Slack channel or a Slack team, that might feel a little bit overwhelming or exciting, depending on your personality. So xAPI cohort, it is a free, virtual, vendor neutral, right? Vendor neutral and vendor supported. right? So you can expect not to be sold to, but absolutely, right? Supported by vendors with free trials. Somebody picked up the $1 grass blade free trial, or, you know, not free, $1, but the $1 grass blade license opportunity in the Slack. That's fantastic, right? The vendor community, right, appreciates what we are all doing here in Cohort, because you're all learning how better to interact with this space, right? And so they want to support you on this. It's a 12-week learning by doing or learning by watching team learning experience and community. And I love seeing these teams of people, you know, kind of form from all over the world, come together, figure things out, and make something. We have weekly web sessions like we have here, right? And they're also recorded. And then we have project teams that happen in Slack. We provide a GitHub environment, all sorts of good stuff. And when you are registered, you are able to receive the weekly email with updates, web session recordings, links to additional learning opportunities and good stuff, and advance notice of things like next cohort and next xAPI party and other good things to know. Here we are in the curriculum. We are in the building and tuning the ecosystem. We're wrapping up our building and tuning phase, right? Our kind of what is it? How do I do it? What is it? And next, right? Start looking at next week, starting March 17th, we're going to start with demos, right? xAPI in action are 2 real live at scale case examples out in the real world. Okay, with Amy and Khalid. And then we'll have demos from project teams. Project teams, please start preparing yourselves for a 10 or so minute demo at the March 31st or April 7th cohort session. April 7th is our final cohort session of this semester. We'll have a demo fest opportunity at the Learning Solutions Conference and xAPI party on May 6th. So teams, you are right now designing, building, getting help, testing, repeating, finding out that you have other work, and your really fun time here at xAPI Cohort kind of impinges on that sometimes. It all happens. So we're in good shape. Let's talk about these demo opportunities, right? So our quick project demos in a few weeks, 10 minutes or so, maybe longer if we talk about it. Happy to do that. Demo Fest, purple one in the middle, Demo Fest is at the Learning Solutions Conference in Orlando. This one is live. You have to have your physical body in Orlando, paid for that conference, and then you submit. It's free to enter, but you have to pay to be in the conference in order to be able to enter. Your whole team doesn't have to do it. Just one person can do it if you want. And there's a personal projects category, which is exactly where Cohort fits. I'm really, really excited to see this. Okay. And then we'll have xAPI party back online May 6th, and you'll have either a full conference session slot or a half set slot to be able to share out your demos. So all good stuff there. All good stuff there. I would like to invite to the stage Stella Lee. Stella has a LinkedIn Learning course. Stella is the founder and CEO at Paradox Learning. Stella is really just a bright spark of data and analytics and insight in our industry. And I absolutely love having her here. She's from Calgary, where it's, you know, any day that I complain that it's cold in Michigan, I need to channel my Calgary, my Edmonton, my friends from Canada. So, Stella, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you have an opportunity to do so. It's -5 Celsius. That's kind of chilly. Actually, yeah, it was 24 degrees Fahrenheit this morning. So you're a little chillier.
That's warm. Yeah.
That's warm. Yeah. So, Stella, welcome. Yeah. I feel like whenever I go somewhere, the question is, what about the ethics and the privacy and the issues, which is hilarious because these never really came up in this form, right? So why don't you go ahead, share your screen, take it away, and I won't be very, very far off, but I'll just be on mute.
Thanks for having me, Megan. Yeah, let me just give me 1 second to switch it over here. There you go. Can you guys? No, can you see it now? You guys okay?
Yes, this is perfect.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I get distracted by the chats now because people are talking about hockey. Thank you for having me, Megan. Now, I felt like I haven't had enough coffee to fuel my presentation, but I would power through. Anyway, thank you so much for everybody attending the session. As Megan said, my name is Stella. I'm here to talk about data ethics today with you guys. By the way, feel free to continue. I love seeing all the chat activity, so feel free to continue. I would try to pause, and I think Megan and Jamie so graciously also agreed to monitor the chats for me. And there's hopefully time also to discuss toward the end if we don't pick up some of the questions during. So let's get started. So first of all, always love to start with the definition. What's data ethics, right? When you hear the word ethics, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? And feel free to share. And there's no right or wrong answer. There's many definitions out there. Like what I generally like to think of ethics is part of. Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to read all the text coming in. It's really just setting the standards of what's morally, legally, and socially acceptable. Yeah, and people talk about privacy rights and user rights, and what's acceptable, what's not, right? Based on these 3 dimensions. But recently, I was inspired by a conversation I had with my friend, Dr. Stephanie Moore, a fellow practitioner and a professor, and she mentioned that in looking at data ethics, it's useful to consider that as an opportunity for us to have an ongoing questioning and critical reflection. I love that so much because, as you guys know, ethics is not a one-off concerns, right? It evolves and it changes over time, and I think the ability to create a space for critical questioning and ongoing reflection, it's really important. So I would kind of leave that with you to think about what is data ethic and what does it mean to you? And did you build in this ongoing and critical reflection in your practice? So start with that. And the second thing I wanted to talk about is it's a broad topic. Like you guys already talk about, it's doing the right thing, being responsible, it's privacy and all that stuff. And I want you guys to think about data ethics is not just like, there's many dimensions to it as you're practicing in your field. Think about, not just how you handle data, but also how do you curate? Where did you source your data? How do you create them? Transparency about what's collected, and also how do you process it? How do you cleanse your data? How do you interpret it? How do you share that? How do you communicate? How do you, disseminate that information? It's from, start to finish. It's ethical concerns at every step of the way. So I challenge to think about data ethics at a broader perspective. Okay. So having said that, by the way, are you guys seeing this slide okay? Let me know if there's any problem seeing it, and I would adjust accordingly. Okay, perfect. So I love all the thumbs up. This is so cute. So why should you care about data ethics? Well, because as a practitioner, as a designer, as somebody in the field, when we design and evaluate learning, decisions that we make have more implications, right? Like even down to the tools we use or not use, what we include, what we exclude, our design approaches, what metrics we pick to measure, and they all have consequences. And I think we need to be mindful about that. So now the bigger question is, okay, so there's always been, you know, issues in the past. Data ethics has always been a topic. So what's the urgency now? So many thoughts on that. So one of the biggest thought is it's a big business. Did you guys know how big of data selling location data alone in your phones? Do you know how big of a business that is? Megan, do you know?
No, but the thought that is a business, and
it is a business.
How amazingly large that must be is kind of like blowing my mind right now.
Yeah, it's a $12 billion US business right now. And it's legal in the US. It's not legal in Canada for selling personal data, but you can get anonymized data. So it's that better, but it's still not great. I'm going to share with you about this reference that I talk about location data. I'll just put it in the chat here. Feel free to have a look at that. So yeah, so that's a big, you know, it's a big concern where money goes. People, you know, would start, you know, paying attention. But also I think organizations have always been collecting data. But the volume of data that we are getting now, it's huge. It's never been before. Just think about how much systems we use in our organization. Think about your HLIS system. Think about your LMS. Think about you know, everything else that we use, and not just in silos. Now we have ability to triangulate the data, so that gets tricky. And also, I think artificial intelligence platforms are flooding the market right now in educational field in particular, and that gets hairy just because a lot of times we don't really quite know where the data is coming from or how it's being used or what decisions are made. So I think now it's definitely the time to look at data ethics and really try to incorporate into our daily practice. So there's a sense of urgency right now in that. So having said that, what you might be wondering, okay, so what are some of the challenges that we're facing? Like, what are some use cases? As you know, we're here, so we do have many challenges. The first one, and we're going to unpack each one of them. One is learning being too prescriptive. The second one is it would cause unintentional biases. And the other challenge is somebody mentioned before, their privacy and surveillance concerns. So let's unpack each one, okay? Learning being too prescriptive. Have you guys used recommender systems either in learning or in your personal life, like Spotify, like Netflix, like Amazon when you buy a book? It say, oh, you might also like this, or you know, your social network also purchases somebody with your kind of profile also like these other things. That's a recommended system. LXP is a learning experience platform is an example. Yeah, recommendation, it's everywhere. Personalization, right? It's sometimes you hear the word personalization. So I want to illustrate why this is a problem. So are you guys aware of this graph? Do you know what it is? Give you a minute. Anybody? Okay. It is called a long tail. Yep, that's it, Martin. You're spot on. So essentially what a long tail is that you get the head where most of the content, it's popular, it fits into the red area. And then there's a lot of other little things, right? If you think about Spotify, there are all kind of music that maybe Viking punk. It's something that not very many people are listening to, but it is a category of music. And you know, but those are the challenge about having a long tail in a recommender system is that many recommender systems incentivize or reinforces what are most popular, and they keep recommending that instead of looking at the long tail and try to say, okay, can we diversify the recommendation? How do we make those more available to learners or to users? So it is a known problem in recommender system for a really long time, and we need to be aware of it. Perhaps even the way we label certain content, perhaps the way we group and categorize certain content. As instructional designers, as learning technologists, sometimes we get involved in that process of organizing your learning systems. Sometimes you help reveal these learning systems. So it's good to be aware of what the limitations are, so you're not causing any unintentional biases or making it too prescriptive for people. Same with adaptive system. It's always, once you adapt to a certain pathway, what did you miss? Is that process transparent? Can you question it? So be aware of it. Yeah, somebody mentioned how Facebook's algorithm works for content suggestions. Yeah, actually LinkedIn works the same way. It just, they don't talk about it. So keep that in mind. So we already talked about unintentional biases a little bit, so let's dive a little bit into it. So you guys might or might not be familiar with sampling biases. So I think this diagram illustrates it perfectly. So there's a lot more, say, color dots out there. But when you say take a sample, take a smaller size out of your population, you might not get the representation always. And it's something you might want to be mindful of when you're, I don't know, doing survey questions, asking people for feedback, looking at log file data in your LMS and other learning systems. Are you looking at a representation of your target learner? Is it something like even the fact that people access the system, you're excluding people that are not accessing the system, right? So you might want to say, how can I get to that other group of people? And it's what people are doing in the system, even representational of the entire organization. So it's, again, take a step back, be mindful and question about this practice. Am I looking at a full set of information? And we're looking at a full set of data. So that's what sampling bias, and there are many biases out there on that. And then there's privacy and surveillance concerns. By the way, things got worse during COVID. I don't know if you guys heard about surveillance. What do you call? I think it's called work productivity tracking tools. Within the first month of COVID, when most everybody had to work from home, many of these time tracking, productivity tracking platforms, within the first month, the sales went up like 3 times. So it tripled the usage. So you can think about, yeah, I know, I was shocked too. and you would think that we had moved past that kind of, industrialization World War II model of tracking workers, but companies still have this mindset. So when you're looking at data, is this inevitably or unintentionally become a breach in people's privacy? Are you using it so people think that, it's a surveillance tool? An example of that is Microsoft 365. This happened I think 2 years ago at least. They implemented this MS 365. And part of the function is that they give you a productivity score, right? And they basically track at an individual level people that can be identified on, well, how many emails did you send today? How much time did you spend on certain tasks? But the challenge is, well, first of all, it's identified at an individual level, and your managers have access to this data. As you can see, I think, can you see this? I kind of you can see the names on the left-hand column, and then the numbers. Yeah, it's the MS Insights tool. That's right. Thanks, Megan. And also it's problematic because what do you think the assumptions are? Does it sending more email means better? Does it mean you spend more time composing an email? It's also better? How are you are you qualifying the quantity to quality, right? Who makes that decisions? Who makes that judgment call? So yeah. Oh, thanks, Martins. He said in Ontario, Canada, just introduced legislation to restrict employee tracking this way. I think it's also in violation of GDPR in Europe. But it's there are loopholes, right? Like these laws are not perfect, and these software tools are getting more sophisticated. Luckily for this productivity score tracking, Microsoft basically got too much pushback, so they got rid of the measure at the individual level. So they just had an aggregate now. But it's still kind of problematic because then it didn't resolve the issue of, well, what quantify productivity, what qualify as productivity, and who is making these, what kind of assumptions are you making, and who's making decisions on that. So yeah, he really spent all that time using MS software. Yeah, good points. I agree with you. So now that you kind of know some of the challenges, and there are many more, but I just want to highlight the ones that are most pressing. So then, having said that, like what should we be looking out for? You'd be surprised. Like some organizations are like all in with Microsoft, like every single thing. So I personally think that I spend more time trying to fight the UX in Microsoft than anything else. So, but that's another story. So I want to give you guys like some questions to start asking, right? When you're collecting data, especially when you're tasked to do it, like when I know you don't always have the ability to say no if it's being asked by your manager, but I think you should always start with what I like to call it: start with the end in mind. What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish in collecting data? Because sometimes that's not the answer. I think it's not just an ethical concerns, but it's also, you might be wasting your time. You might be getting a wrong answer. So try to understand, like, when you ask or when you task or you wanted to go collect data, is it solving a problem that by gathering and interpreting this data would provide the answers for you? Okay, because I think sometimes it's the same in learning. Like sometimes learning is not the solution for many of the other organizational problems, but we either don't have the ability to push back or we just accept it because we've been conditioned to think that way. So I also wanted us to take a step back and say, okay, is this even a challenge or a problem that, by collecting and interpreting data would actually solve that for you? And then also be really mindful about like, where do you source the data? We talk about, well, there's many systems now. There's XLIS, there's LXP, there's LMS, there's content library, there's informal and social learning system, there's knowledge management tools, everything else. So also think about, like, are they skewing our perspective in some ways? Because, like, if you're collecting data in, I don't know, say a social learning platform, is it only a subset of data that you're getting? Are you getting a good reel of how people are interacting? Because some people hate social learning and they might never use it. So you're also excluding people, or you're making assumptions that everybody is very tech savvy because they use the system, but that's a self-selection, right? Like, people feel comfortable with tech, therefore they use it more. People don't feel comfortable with tech, they shy away from the system, but that's not giving you a good view on, if people are using the system in the way that you wanted to get insights on. We talk about data representational and what we're trying to do. So we don't need to spend more time. I think thinking about metrics is also very important, because what you think, like, metrics is such as completion rate for training is an important metrics. Have we thought about, are we assigning value in, do we care about people's attendance more than anything else? is this what you think learning is, right? Because by measuring something, you're essentially giving value on the thing that you measure. And you also are like leaving out other things that should equally be, measured. But by not measuring that, you also say, oh, that's not important. Like, do you care if people actually apply that of what they learn into their jobs? And if you don't measure that, what kind of message is that sending the organization? Or if you're only caring about return on investment, ROI, is it just because you only care about spending patterns? Is that sending the wrong kind of message to people as well? So think about, metrics, it's value based, it's value driven. So, don't forget that. So then assumptions we're making about learners. Again, so if you're, collecting data, are you making assumptions about, people spending more time in a certain system? Does it mean it's better? Like what we're saying before, writing longer emails, are we assuming that people are more productive? So also think about assumptions. And I think finally, important question is like, who owns the data? What do they do with it? Who else have access? How long are they gonna store it for? How do they archive the data? So I think a lot of more privacy and security concern. I think it's good that now we're getting a lot more awareness. There's, getting a lot of press time in data security breach. I think we are all a little bit more sophisticated now because there's just so many privacy concerns. But these are some of the questions to start. Finally, just a few touch points on, okay, we know there's many challenges. There are many things we need to start asking questions. Well, what else can we do? Wow, you came to this talk, so that's a good start. Start educating yourself about data ethics. So data ethics literacy is basically just get yourself, understand what questions to ask, where do you need to take a step back and start thinking about these issues that are concerning data ethics. So I think, and there are many, I included some links at the end of this presentation, which I understand you will also get emailed to. So there are some resources out there. I think there's more now. There's many different data ethics organizations, government bodies that put out good practices as well. So I encourage you to look into that. And we can totally have a conversation after to just exchange some ideas. Secondly, it's really important to push for governance and policy. I know many country governments have policies now on ethics, but at a more regional level, does your city has that? Does your organization have that? Is that shared? Do people know? So I think having that structure in place, really holding people accountable, I think that is a critical step. And sometimes just get involved, right? You can always serve in a committee. There are many NGOs that are looking for volunteers to review ethical guidelines for data and tech. So also get involved in that and be part of the governance committee. Honestly, there's so much work out there. And also, I really like this framework called Privacy by Design, Ppd. It came from systems engineering world, but I think it really applied to what we do. It's that privacy concerns should not be at the end of things or projects. It should be from the get-go, right? It needs to be in a holistic way of thinking about it, and it's to be built in from the start of the project and have touch points throughout. So that's basically it. You can search for it. I also created, I included a link at the end. It's by Dr. Kovolkian. She's professor in Toronto, and she proposed this framework that I find quite useful. So here are some resources for you. I got tons more. You connect with me, and I can share a lot more information. So finally, I don't know, Megan, do we have like a few minutes for people to just have conversations? Okay.
We do, and I've got some questions, so.
Okay, so and finally, just really connect with me. Love to hear from you about your practices, your concerns, your take on data ethics as well. So just continue the conversation among ourselves, among your cohort, and like again, incorporate into your daily practice. So
I love it. I love it. Hey, Stella, thank you so much. And I think that I'm just, if I'm putting ideas out into the world for a future cohort session or a cohort project team, if somebody wanted to take on some data privacy issues, right? That could be kind of interesting. So Stella, I do have some questions for you. So Marilyn is asking, it's pretty typical to ask an LMS for their data security documentation before contracting with them. When you're deciding what LMS to use, right? So you're in that selection process. Can you share with us some important questions or considerations or things you might pose to those vendors in that evaluation time period?
Yeah, I would say like where's their server based, right? In Canada, when you work with public sectors and government, there's a mandate that the data storage has to be based in Canada. So I don't know, that's something you guys need to consider. I always ask questions like, first of all, how do you collect the data? Who owns it? What's your data policy? In terms of like, how long do you have this data for? And what do you do to archive them? Who else have access to them? Also, and another thing I ask is more from what's your underlying pedagogical assumptions about your system? As in, like, when you design your system, how do you envision your users to use it? Are you making assumptions that people will interact in a social learning kind of way, and therefore you build discussion forums? Like, for example, Moodle, it's an open source LMS, mostly used by nonprofit and educational institutions. They're based on a social constructivist approach. They're very clear and explicit in what pedagogical model they're based on. And I would say a lot of LMS don't know. I would challenge them. I would ask them about these questions. What else? I also always like to look at the LMS companies and see who's in the leadership team and if they actually have educators in them. Also curious how diverse their team is, because it also shaped how they design and developed and market the system. So these are some of the questions I have. I'm sure I have more to share.
That's all good. That is all good. So I got another question for you, mostly because I'm curious. The idea of privacy by design is intriguing in its elegance. Do you have like a tactical, tangible example that you could just like give it shape with?
Sorry, I just saw Tiffany's comments. I think, it's really important to know, like, how do you get out of the system? Like, it's like every contract, like, if I don't like you, how easy it is to leave, and how easy it is to get the content and the data out. So I think that's always an important contract negotiation as well. So thanks, Tiffany, for raising that. Sorry, Megan. Let's get back to you.
I'll dig in a little bit deeper. Also, I think we can delete it as administrators or forget you as administrators, but how do we ensure that if somebody pulled a right to be forgotten, how actually delete it?
Oh, and kind of add to that conversation. Recently listened to an interview by Edward Snowden, and he, talking about privacy and security issues. And he said, things that get deleted, online, it's never deleted. It never completely go away. So the only way you can protect your information is by encryption. So if you really care about certain content, certain data that you don't want access to, encrypt it. That's my best practice recommendation.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So do you have a quick example before we go to team updates on privacy by design, which could be encryption? So, oh, Suzanne asked a much bigger question on how do you encrypt data. That is probably a bigger question. That's a bigger question. Good one. Real good one, but bigger. So.
Okay. So you don't want me to? Okay, there's so many questions now.
Yeah, no.
Okay, which one?
You pick one. Privacy by design, or very quick. How do you encrypt? If there's a quick version for that.
There's software you can buy. I mean, that's all I can say within 20 seconds. We can do more about that. Privacy by design. There are like a whole method out there. So I think I would say go to the link I send you. When you're doing xAPI, I would start looking at the recommendation of like what steps you need to follow, because it talks about at the analysis stage, what do you need to think about, like at the design stage, at the implementation. So I think it maps across to learning design process as well.
Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. Well, here I'm thinking like design for, it's just because I'm working on a book on data analytics and learning, right?
Yes.
There's a whole chapter on design for data, right? Design a screen to get data out of it. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, and the privacy. Yeah. Okay. So, like, awesome. So as usual, thank you so much. Yeah. I tend to think that the quality of questions, right, is a direct relationship to the engagement with the topic. And we have some quality questions here. I'm actually going to ask you, Martin just posted a question too. I'm going to put that in the main chat for you. And if while we're doing team updates, you wanted to respond to that.
Yeah.
Question. But anyway, that's a thing. That's a thing. So I'm going to get to team updates, which means Brian Wanzer, you are up, my friend. We have a few team updates today. I'm actually super excited to see the work that's being done in the teams. So Team CMI5 is working on some stuff. There was some work done, but really a meaty update is expected next week. Brian, are you out there?
I do not see in the crowd.
Okay, all good then. So Brian let us know, or the team let us know, right? They've got some work going on, and they've got some a variety of different, right, data providers, surveys, discussion prompts, branching scenarios, business data, all sorts of good stuff. There was a report of, loaded several thousand statements in to be able to give this team something meaty to work with. So that's kind of a fun place to be as a team. So rock on, folks. Team H5P, I don't think they have anybody here this week. Please raise your hand if you are. I wasn't able to discern that from the Slack update, but Matt Cleaver is going to jump in. He posted some useful information, and so he's going to join them next week for a conversation. I was talking with some folks the other day, and they're like, "Wait a minute, H5P does xAPI?" Yes, it does, and it's not actually anything new. It's been doing it for a while. It's pretty cool. Team LTEM, life has gotten in the way. However, Nick did score the $1 Grassblade LRS, and that looks like that will be the LRS of choice for Team LTEM. Team More Than Scorn, Mary Elizabeth, are you out there? Yes, ma'am.
Hello, hello.
Hey. What's up?
Well, we've had a very busy week. It just wasn't xAPI busyness. um, yeah, we definitely had our day jobs get in the way of what we wanted to do with xAPI this week, but we were able to combine our storyline files that we had created separately and set up a Dropbox folder so that we could share files with each other. And then we published our test storyline file as a SCORM file in different ways to interact with the LMS. So both just using JavaScript to give us a test user for the actor, but then also trying to see if we can get our LMS to pull the actor information from our user information in our LMS. And then there were some other plans for testing within other LMSs and seeing what we get back into our watershed LRS, and then also some testing in SCORM Cloud. So lots of testing going on this week.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, testing is where it's at. It's where you find out what you need to do next.
Yep.
So fantastic. Thanks, Mary Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Team personalized learning. This is last week's update. They are going to, they're planning on doing a bit more this week to have something more meaty to share next week. And the same thing with Team Storyline Beginner, bring your own project. This actually is the project that I am suggesting brand new newbies come, because this is the Storyline Beginner, bring your own project, right? This is when new people are joining, I'm suggesting come here because this is a space where it's a tool you already have. The expectation is that you are a beginner to xAPI and you don't necessarily have to do a lot of coordinating with other people. So that's an awesome option there. I don't know if there's anybody from Team Unreal Engine here this week. There wasn't a formal update, but I was pretty stoked to see a whole lot of action going on in there from looking at different data repositories and other good stuff. So I was pleased to see what was going on there. And Khalid, I don't know, you've got, you are with Team xAPI Personalization. Do you have an update that you want to share? I didn't see anything in Slack, but I did see you here. Maybe no longer. It is late at night. Not as late as it is for Rodolin, but it's still late. Okay. So as we wrap things up, some good things to know. It is never too late to join Cohort. Please keep sharing and spreading the word so that folks can also be developing their skills. This is a pretty special opportunity. You can follow the xAPI Gnome on Twitter for updates. We'll be back here next Thursday, as well as the virtual xAPI party. I absolutely welcome you to join that, even if you can't make it the entire time. It's a fantastic time to get in and see some stuff. I don't know, maybe we'll ask Stella to come back and present at xAPI party. That would be pretty cool. She was pretty awesome today. So that was a good load of fun. Hint, hint, Stella. Which means I owe you big time, Stella. Thank you. And I would love to see you. I don't know who's going to be at Learning Solutions or Demo Fest. I will make tacos happen. I, especially if anybody's at Demo Fest or at Learning Solutions, I can be buying the tacos because that's a live event. So let's see if we can have a good showing at Learning Solutions. So let me know if anybody's going. We are going to be sending out a link, and I think there's still a $50 coupon that applies if you are registering for the Learning Solutions Conference in Orlando. Weather should be nice. If you need anything in the meantime, reach out directly on Slack to Matt or Jamie or I. You can email to xapicohort@torranceLearning.com. That's particularly handy if you can't get into Slack. So there's lots of ways to get connected up. I am super excited to have you all joining us every week in the Slack, doing cool stuff. I love to watch those channels, and get out there and make something cool, everybody. You're doing good work. Have a great week.